Hello and welcome to this week's Web of Light. I have to my right
Angie Angie.
And I'm Dr. Kevin. And every week we try to bring you ideas, people, whatever that are out there, companies, organizations that are weaving a web of light in the world, trying to make the world a lighter and brighter and better place just for you. If you have recently joined the Web of Light family, I know that we have the people that have picked us up from Maine to California through the public access system, but we aren't always notified. So if you're watching this show and it's recently appeared on your cable station, send us an email at drkevin@weboflight.com or Angie@weboflight.com, and we would love to welcome you to our Web of Light family. And so please let us know. So, Miss Ange, what's exciting this week? Anything? Got something exciting going on?
Nothing too exciting. I'm just getting ready to actually get prepared for the Great Expo.
Yes, September 30th, October 1st.
Keep my busy.
Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Everybody loves to go to Portsmouth. That's what I hear. And I used to live in Portsmouth, so I know it's true. Everybody loves to go to Portsmouth.
Starting to get a little psyched because we're going to be starting to get people into the activities and things we're doing at the center.
Presentations.
So it's kind of nice to see that. And
at the end of the show, we'll go over some of the upcoming classes in the Wolf Center in Hudson, which has a new sign.
Of course.
There's a new sign on the mailbox. Angie surprised me and got a new sign ordered so that it's right there. And I surprised her and actually got the holes punched and got it on the mailbox. Hey. But, you know, so at the Web of Light Expo at the Great Bay Community College, we're going to have over 100 booths, and we're going to have over 20 presentations. I know that our show that we did in the spring had 993 people that went through the doors over the weekend because everybody loves to go to Portsmouth. I suspect that our numbers will be larger there. I know when my office was in Portsmouth, which has been several times, I've had offices in Portsmouth, Dover, Portland, and we won't mention like Phoenix and Seattle and those places. We'll just keep it to the New England ones. I used to have a client that would come down and see me once a month from upstate New York because they just loved to come to Portsmouth. And they said, I come, and they would do a session with me on Saturday morning and spend the weekend in Portsmouth. And you know, there was like, they didn't mind. I was like, okay, because I can do it by the phone. Oh, no, we like to drive. I can't tell you how many times I would hear that. So if you like to drive to Portsmouth on September 30th. And come and play and listen to our speakers and check out our vendors who are out there weaving a web of light in the world themselves.
For the entire weekend.
For the entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Yep. It's going to be the place to be for the weekend.
Yes.
So, you know, I was reading something recently because alternative health and wellness has become a $1 billion industry. And with it being a $1 billion industry, we find things like a lot of loopholes in what people can call organic, which actually isn't really organic, but they can get certified as organic, especially the big companies that have a lot of money, so they kind of play with the language in a little bit and work things in. And then you go to the local farmer's market, and the local guy who's actually growing organic can't call it organic because it's so expensive to get the label and get the certification. So they have to say they're naturally grown. And whenever you have a $1 billion industry, you got a billion snake oil salesmen involved in it.
That's right.
Trying to chase people down. And the question always is, who can I trust? Who can I go to? On this show, we often talk about, you know, preventative health care, things you can take back your power with. And we are, on a regular basis, we tell people, when you have an MD, make sure the MD is a managing director who will work with whoever you choose and is not a minor deity who will tell you, oh yes, oh by the way, you're scheduled to die on Friday, don't be late. Because there's nothing else we, in a very limited perspective, Western medicine can do for you. So you can't get better because we'll be offended. So make sure, Friday, we'll give you till noon. Make sure you're dead. So that being said, I'm going to introduce today's guest as somebody that I can personally recommend. I have known this man for quite a few years, actually. Our paths have crossed. I remember when he opened his first store, and he is the real deal. He can really tell you the difference between what is a gimmick, what is yesterday's news, and what you can be doing to stay healthy through food choices, supplement choices, and things like that. And that is Ron Stock. He is a registered pharmacist. He is the founder and owner of the Herbal Path. He opened the Dover store in 1997 with the mission of providing a reputable source of information on integrative medicine in addition to a source of high-quality therapeutic natural products. Throughout his 25 plus years of experience in the health field, Ron has always been an innovator and a pioneer, seeking ways to improve patient outcomes, compliance, and helping to educate to be responsible for their own health and well-being. Yes, people, you have to take responsibility. Nobody does it for you. Bringing his pharmacy background to the herbal and natural medicine world enables Ron to have a better understanding of how natural medicines work and how they may interact with prescription drugs. Ron is a 1988 graduate from Rutgers University College of Pharmacy. He has previously worked in many facets of the pharmaceutical field, including retail pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, HMO pharmacy, and pharmaceutical manufacturing, and pharmaceutical killing you. Oh, I'm sorry. And pharmaceutical sales. Oh, I'm knocking things over. Ron was founding president and subsequent treasurer of NESHA, and he's going to tell us what, there we go, the New England Seacoast Holistic Health Association. It's been so long since I've said the full name, I couldn't remember. I knew what NESHA was, but I couldn't remember what the letters stood for. Ron is also the founder of the Journey to Wellness Integrative Medical Center and Earth's Harvest Kitchen and Juicery, both of which are located next door to the Herbal Path in Dover, New Hampshire. Ron also, I don't know what year, but we'll find out, was able to expand and also open up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So welcome to the show. Ron, how are you today?
Dr. Kevin, thanks for having me. I'm doing really well, and thanks for the introduction. Angie, good to see you too.
Nice to see you.
So you started as a pharmacist with all the traditional. You actually did pharmaceutical sales, it says there. I didn't know that you belonged to the evil empire. I can picture you in the little white stormtrooper's outfit, you know. What changed your mind, or what was it that made you go from the dark side to the?
Well, I use that terminology all the time, because my wife happens to be a physician, so she's on the dark side, and I'm the rebellion. So
that must be quite the marriage.
So we've learned to agree to disagree. But you asked, how did I get there? And I think it's an evolution. Everybody probably has some evolution where in the drug world, watching and seeing people not getting better, getting sicker and sicker, the drug's not working, people being put on multiple medications, never being taken off the medication. So if the medication is not working, we don't take them off of it, we just add another medication. There was a lot of things that happened in my career, but there was little steps that had to do a little bit more with when I was in the HMO. We did a lot more counseling. There was a law passed in I don't remember the exact year, but it was the Omnibus Reconciliation Act of 1990, and it went into effect in 1993. I think if those are correct. But it required the pharmacists to counsel the patients. And it was really geared towards the Medicaid patients, but you weren't supposed to discriminate, and you're supposed to counsel all patients. And so through that push of counseling was probably where it first started evolving, where you had more of an opportunity to talk to that patient. But I don't know if you've had any prescriptions filled. I try to avoid prescriptions, but from what I understand right now, your counseling just is a little sign over here, and do you need to talk to the pharmacist? No, and you're on your way.
Yeah, they actually almost encourage you to refuse talking to the so it's kind of get this feeling. There's the long line. A few years back, I had a medical issue, and for a short time period, had to be on some medications for like 6 months. They were supposed to be lifetime, but I don't buy into that. But I remember it was kind of like, and would you like to talk to the pharmacist? And I always thought, probably will only tick me off. No. But How about you? Do you
I
ever-
have a very good rapport with my pharmacist because I believe pharmacists are more knowledgeable than doctors ever could be. So when I go to look at a prescription that is given to me, I will ask all kinds of questions with the pharmacist because I'm not one to read I mean, they give you that whole thing to read, and it gets really into, like, if you read that, you'll drive yourself nuts because it tells you everything that you could die from by taking this medicine, or how you could lose your hair or whatever. But if you speak directly with the pharmacist and say, okay, so I like to have this medication, I like to have, my vitamins, I like to have this, how is that going to affect it if I have this? And most of the pharmacists I've come across will be very good at talking to me about that.
I mean, it definitely is a very important function of the pharmacist. The hard part in pharmacy is, if you're in a pharmacy and you're pumping out 300-400 prescriptions a day, and usually there's more than one pharmacist, but you don't have a lot of time to spend to talk to all your patients. But you're right, the pharmacists were, I can't remember if it was the Gallup polls, whatever, were considered the most trusted professional. They were number one for many, many, many years in a row, even beating out clergy. I think they have moved down to 2 now. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't been following it.
I had an experience about 4 years ago. I had doctors who had prescribed me, and they were all going to the same pharmacy. So these doctors prescribed me specific medications. And come to find out, when I went to the pharmacist, he actually brought me aside and he said, do you know you really shouldn't be taking this while you're taking this? And I'm like, the doctor prescribed all of it. And he's like, well, you better talk to your doctor because this isn't going to happen. And it's good to have somebody like that that's actually going to bring you to those, because they know better. I don't care. Pharmacists know better than the doctors. That's the way I
they
look
do,
at it.
absolutely. And one of the downsides of it is there's a lot of known interactions, and most of those interactions are just, a little, you put your initials in or whatever and you bypass it, because it's known. It's known that this interacts with that. But polypharmacy, the hard part with polypharmacy is we oftentimes know with drug A and drug B what they do together. But when you're taking A, B, C, D, and E, and you take that with something else, now it just changes the gamut, how it affects your liver, and how it affects your metabolism, how the drugs are going to interact, are going to become more potent, are they going to become less potent. So polypharmacy is a very difficult thing, and especially when you look in the elderly, and nowadays, I mean, people are taking, not even elderly, but they're taking 10, 12 medications. Yeah. When I was in pharmacy school, only people who took 2 or 3 or 5 medications were someone that was 65 and older. And now you see, these 45-year-olds taking that many medications, and they're not getting any healthier. They're getting sicker and sicker.
One of the things is, though, and things change through the years, and you may not be completely up to date at this, but how much does the pharmacist get to know about herbs or supplements or vitamins or things like this? Is because what doctors what doctors are trained on in that area or in nutrition is almost non-existent. It's like that much, Right. Do pharmacists have a greater, or did you get all of your knowledge outside of the pharmacy realm?
I got most of my knowledge outside of the pharmacy realm. So it was self-taught or through seminars and courses after pharmacy school. There are a few pharmacy programs, like Mass College of Pharmacy down in Boston does offer as an elective an herbal course, or a couple different herbal courses. So some pharmacists who realize that their patients are using this stuff, they're going out, or they may even have personal interests, but they're taking this course and they're learning. We actually have the opportunity to have pharmacy interns that come from both the Boston and the Manchester campuses. They come for 6 weeks. We really shake their world, rock their world. They just sometimes don't know what they're getting into, but when they leave, they really have changed. They've changed their diets. They've changed lifestyle habits. They do a lot of really interesting things. They start recommending things for their parents. They see their parents respond to some of those things. They start taking things themselves, and they're just amazed because in pharmacy school, that's not what they're being taught there. They're being taught about drugs, and that's good, but there is more to it because the patients are using alternative medicine. They are using dietary supplements and herbal medicine, and the doctors and the pharmacists should know more about them.
Yeah, just to remind our audience, Ron is a pharmacist, but he is Herbal Path, so he's a herbalist. I don't know how you describe that, or if there's a title to that.
Well, there's not. I mean, we consider ourselves natural pharmacists, so I do have a couple other pharmacists who work for me as well, and one of them is an herbalist. I'm actually not a certified herbalist, so I can't necessarily use that terminology.
Right.
But I mean, I have been using herbs extensively for 20 years, as this month is marking our 20th anniversary for opening the first store.
Yeah.
So, do you think that there is, and what my mind went to was when I started doing some continuing ed credits for teachers about ADD and ADHD, and this was 20 years ago, probably, well, 15 years ago, and but I was starting to do that. People were surprised at how many teachers were actually looking for alternative information and didn't want to do the whole drug route, and they saw what happened to the kids and things. And I bring that up because do you think that if you were to offer a continuing ed credit program or a class or a course, do you think there's a lot of pharmacists out there that would like to learn and it's just not fallen into their thing? Or do you think for the most part, most pharmacists are still stuck in a bot mentality?
I think that the pharmacists in general tend to be a little bit more open to natural medicine and alternative medicine. And you also see it on the medical practitioner side. Nurse practitioners, PAs, tend to be a little bit more open. But even the medical doctors, I noticed over the course of my 20 years of doing this that there was a transition from when we first opened up. The doctors, were relieved. They said, "Oh, well, we don't know much about it. Here, go down to the Herbal Path, and they can help you over there." And then our reputation started building. They started knowing who we were. But then, and again, I don't remember how many years in between. But then all of a sudden, they started writing a prescription, even though we don't take prescriptions. It's over the counter. But the prescription would come in with the wrong dose. And then a couple years later, it would come in another prescription with the correct dosage. And then all of a sudden, we saw a shift away from that again. And that gets into how medicine is changing in this country. And this is, whether, with Obamacare and how Obamacare has influenced, well, first of all, ownerships of medical practices. I don't know about nationally, but I know in our area, most of the practitioners are now owned by the hospital. And there's certain things that are dictated by Obamacare to get certain remuneration for the hospital. They have to meet certain standards, and those standards mean we have to practice medicine in a certain way, which means it's a one-size-fits-all model as opposed to looking at each person individually and finding what's the best thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very disturbing. I haven't got as much into that end of stuff. I get into the educational stuff because of the work with the ADD and ADHD and see that there is no actual high-quality trained educators that work in the classroom that have any input into testing. I am assuming that a lot of Obamacare or a lot of this stuff, and I have to tell you, I'm not a big fan of Obamacare for one major reason. I think everybody should have health care, but I think everybody should have the health care they choose. And if you choose a homeopath, you should cover that equally with choosing an MD. And if you want to go to, a naturopath or whatever, if you're going to say have health care, then make it health care, not sick care, and give people a choice. I don't want my government to be my parents, especially not bad parents. It's bad enough they're being parents, but they're being bad parents, which is even worse. So how much of what you're seeing evolving even opens up to include non-AMA pharmaceutical-driven agendas?
I'm not sure if I understand the question exactly, but I think that the AMA-driven agendas are pushing doctors to prescribe in certain ways. So if you have a certain condition, the only solution is you have to use this drug. And if that drug doesn't work, then we add this drug. And if that doesn't do what we need to do, we add another drug. But there's no longer that openness to say, hey, there might be a natural supplement that we can try. And if the patient says, hey, I'd like to try this, and the doctor used to be open to it, but now they're being more closed to it because they have to meet certain standards of having a certain percentage of their patient census on that drug. And if they have a person that wants to go rogue and wants to do it naturally, that goes against them, and then they get labeled as a non-compliant patient.
Well, and that's exactly my point. And so my question was, is anybody but MDs, pharmaceutical companies, AMA, being consulted when these things come down? I mean, this is all follow the money lobbyist crap.
Well, I don't know the full answer, but I want to say I'm not even sure if it's the AMA that's being consulted or the doctors at all. It may be the upper levels of the AMA, but it's the pharmaceutical industry, it's the lobbyists, as you said. So the end players aren't out there being how do we solve our healthcare problem? So when we look at, I agree with you with, Obamacare. It's not so much opposed the idea that everybody should have coverage. I think that's great, and I agree with what you said, that we should be able to choose who we go and who we see. But when we look at healthcare in this country, healthcare is fundamentally broken, and covering everybody in a broken system doesn't fix healthcare. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's a big problem. And so there's a whole generation of people that grew up watching their parents on more and more and more medications and saying, hey, I don't want to die the way my parents died. And they're trying to be healthier, and they're trying to be more proactive, and they're trying to change their lifestyles to be healthier so that they don't have to take the medications. But again, how many people do you know that are in the 50 years and older that aren't taking any medications? There's, most people are on one or two, if not more, medications.
Not me, not this guy. Well, I remember 20 years ago, Ron, sitting with my parents and them making fun of me because I took my little supplement thing out and I was taking all my supplements. They're like, why are you taking all of those pills? And I looked and I pointed over to their medical at that point, and they were in their 50s at that, they were in their 60s at that point, and looked and said, these will mean I will never need those. And now that they're like 80 and 89, and they're completely in that system, they've gone to the Reader's Digest recommendation supplementation adding to their. Now they wouldn't ever ask me. Profit in their own country, never happened. But I was like, and people don't get it. That there is a direct correlation. If you're taking them correctly, and eating correctly, and doing, it just isn't as simple as a pill is going to save you from self-abuse of nature.
Right. Well, but it can be also, but it can also be very confusing to the consumer because there's lots of conflicting information out there. And what I mean by that is that there are a study that can show that an herb does something good for a certain condition, and then there could be another study that shows that an herb, that same herb doesn't do anything for that condition. And the question is, well, does it or does it not? And the hard part is that when we see it done in the herbal industry, it gets put out through the media that the herb doesn't work. You shouldn't take it. It's not effective. Mm-hmm. But in the drug world, there are lots of studies that show that the drug that is being studied does not work. But those studies don't get published. And so you might have 20 clinical trials, and 14 of them are positive, but 7 or 6 of them are not. You don't hear about the 6, you only hear about the 14. That still is positive in the sense of a ratio of 14 to 6, but I'm just using that as a number. Yeah. It was a great example was there was a study with St. John's wort, and I think it was Paxil or Zoloft, I can't remember which drug, and they gave it to severely depressed patients for 4 weeks. And there was 3 arms of the trial. They had the drug trial, they had the herb trial, and they had the placebo. And if you looked at it just from the beginning, you knew that, well, first of all, St. John's wort was only indicated for mild to moderate depression, so it really wouldn't or shouldn't work in a severely depressed patient. Mm-hmm. And these were refractory patients who had failed on multiple other medications. The second thing is it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks for even the prescription drugs to work, let alone St. John's wort to do what it was supposed to do. And so when the results of the study, it was published in 4,280 headlines across the country that St. John's wort fails in the study. And the results of the study showed that after 4 weeks, the St. John's wort was 25% effective, but the drug was only 26% effective. So really, both of them failed in the study, but that's not what the headline said. And most people probably only read the headline and they don't read, back on page 32 what the rest of the study said. But the interesting thing was, you want to take a guess of how effective the placebo was?
45?
Well, not quite, but it was 32% effective. Okay, so in that study, in severely depressed patients, yes, St. John's wort did not work, but it also wasn't given enough time. So it was kind of an interesting.
Working in my medical intuitive practice, I will guide people to test for certain things that I feel may help them. Obviously, I'm not a medical doctor. I can't diagnose, can't prescribe. But working as a medical intuitive, and I go, the difference is, think of it, the Western medicine oftentimes will go in like a Sherman tank and run everything over, and maybe it will, at the end of the day, maybe you got rid of the weeds, but you also have no lawn left. And the other one is going to take more time because it's more gentle and it's working in your system. It's trying to get your system oftentimes to do what your system was created to do and may have just kind of fallen off the wagon from doing.
Well, it's true. I mean, if you look at herbs, they typically work by two pathways, a physiological and a pharmacological. So, physiological means it's high in a vitamin or mineral, a nutrient that maybe we're deficient in, and that leads to whatever disease that we're dealing with. Pharmacological means it has a chemical in it, a natural chemical that exerts its effect on the body, such as it would be with the drug. And so the industries do really parallel each other, because when you look at the kind of herbalism that we're doing at the herbal path, it's a little bit more of an allopathic herbalism, because people are coming in and they want an herb for a specific condition, or they're looking for a supplement for a specific condition, as opposed to maybe going to somebody who's working with them very eclectically and trying to look at the whole person or the whole body. It's not that we don't profess that, but the person is saying, all right, I was prescribed this drug, I want something instead of the drug, as opposed to trying to look at the whole picture.
Well, there was a period in my practice when I worked in conjunction with an oncology clinic, and the person that ran it, if somebody wanted to do alternatives, I was like the only person they would recommend to go to, because her and I would talk back and forth, we'd get permission, we'd share information, and my medical intuitive might go, okay, this is what I'm seeing, I don't know what it means, this is where you need to look, this is what's going on, because I'm not trained in that, I don't pretend to be trained in it. But they would go somewhere. But they would also come back and they'd go, okay, this person decided on chemotherapy. And I go, okay, so there's all sorts of stuff we can do to at least buffet the effects. There are things we can put in place that your doctor will never tell you. You decided that's your right to decide as a client that you want to go there, but let's look about what can we do to minimize the damage side of it. And I think that people don't realize, I'm sure you feel about chemotherapy probably like I do. But you can't take away somebody's free right.
Well, absolutely. And one of the biggest frustrations that I've seen with a lot of the chemotherapy patients is I agree that patient should have that right to seek out other things to help them and maybe help them heal and do better or protect their healthy cells while the chemotherapy is damaging the bad cells. But I can't tell you how many times I have somebody come in and their oncologist said, do not take anything natural. And I says, well, do you have anything more specific? Is there an exact drug interaction that we're concerned about, that there's something that you shouldn't take? Because a blanket statement to not take anything natural makes no sense to me. But what are they afraid of? So, and then there's a clinic that I'm aware of out on the West Coast who really work extensively with integrating herbal medicine with chemotherapy, or as an alternative, they'll use natural alternatives without. But they're doing a lot of testing to see about susceptibility of the chemotherapy, as opposed to just throwing in a whole cocktail of things and hoping that one of them is going to do what they want it to do. So it is frustrating to have a patient who really could benefit from things that are just going to support their overall health and well-being, and they're not being allowed to be given that, and they get sicker and sicker again. The quality of life on chemotherapy is horrendous and is awful. And if you can have something that can help them, why would you take away that hope from them?
Well, and it's so interesting because, on this show, when we have conversations like this, one of the things we always want to remind our viewers is you have to assess the knowledge of the person that is giving you the information. A few years back, I had a heart virus, a virus that had attacked my heart, and I ended up in a hospital for a week. I left with like 12% of my heart working. But while I was there, they did a cardiac catheter, and because of a history of heart issues, I've been doing preventative stuff for 20 years for my heart. And so this cardiologist looks at my stuff and he goes, you have the heart of a 20-year-old. There's no blockages, there's no buildup. This is incredible. I don't understand this. This was just a virus. And like, what did you do? And I said, well, I did all this preventative stuff and worked with herbs and supplements. And he looked at me and said, don't ever do herbs. Never do herbs. That might have caused this problem. Herbs might have caused a heart virus, which we all know is ludicrous. So you do have these people in the medical field. After he just told me I had the heart of a 20-year-old, would not listen to what I had to do it. So you have these people in the medical field that are speaking that of which they do not know. They're completely clueless. And then the poor patient goes in there and has been trained to go, yes, doctor, yes, doctor, yes, doctor. And that's why we say on this show all the time, get an MD who's a managing director, not one who's a minor deity. Get one that's going to work with people like you, or me, whoever, or Angie, who does energy healing, that says, whoever you want on your team, we're going to make it work. Not one that you need to bow at their altar.
Right. It's very frustrating when you have a patient come in or a client, and you give them, explain how everything would work and what it would do, and they say, well, they're very interested, but I'm going to go, I want to run it by my doctor. And I think it's great that they want to run it by their doctor, but they're deferring to a higher power, a higher authority who has no knowledge. So what do they want? And there is a certain percentage of the population that still puts their doctor on the ivory tower, and but there are a lot of great doctors out there. Let's face it. But there's also a lot of medical errors and a lot of medical mistakes, and they don't have time to spend with their patients, and they're too busy now. When you go for an office visit, sitting at the computer doing the electronic medical records, they don't have time to spend to get the information they need from the patient, so they're going to try to get it out as quickly as possible, come up with a very quick diagnosis, and boom, here's the drug, and let's move on. And then if the drug doesn't work, we'll increase the dose, and if that doesn't work, we'll add another drug. And then
assembly line medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which is why the government needs to get out of healthcare, actually. Now, I've got a question that you're uniquely suited. In the years that you've seen this shift and change, I grew up with DOs. DOs used to be very separate from MDs in a lot of ways. The DOs I grew up with, went to, county hospital in Tri-County Hospital in Kittery, Maine. It was a teaching DO hospital when I was a kid. Those prescriptions rarely got written unless they were really needed. They could always write them, but they didn't. They would always do the other things. I keep on hearing rumors that in order to get more accepted or understood or whatever, that DOs are losing a lot of that. Do you think DOs are still a breed onto their own in general? Or do you think that there has been an unfortunate unification that's damaging what the clients can access?
I think it's a little more the latter, where you see a shift, and I'm not sure if it's whether the DOs were looking for more acceptance or they just wanted to partake in that form of medicine. I'm not really sure, and I can't speak nationally. I can only speak to obviously what I can see, more locally. But I think that we're also seeing the same shift with the naturopaths. And the naturopaths in New Hampshire, they've been licensed, I can't remember for exactly how long, but almost 20 years as well, maybe about 18 years. And in that period of time, they developed a formulary that there were certain drugs that they were allowed to prescribe. And now they're allowed to prescribe almost, I don't know how large it is, but many more drugs. And it's not that that's so bad. If you're seeing a doctor and you're seeing a naturopath, and if the naturopath can alter or change the dose or maintain you on a medication, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, that you can have that continuity of care. But the concern is what I see now is these naturopaths who used to do everything with vitamins, herbs, and dietary supplements and non-invasive and things that were dangerous are now prescribing drugs as a first line. And so it's almost like if we can't beat them, we'll have them join us. So, because obviously it doesn't look like naturopathic medicine was going away, but modern medicine doesn't want the competition. So somehow there's been an evolution where, and I can't speak for all the naturopaths, but what I'm seeing is they're prescribing more drugs than they were 10 or 15 years ago. Much disheartening to me, because I think that they've lost their path by trying to join the evil empire there.
Okay. So what you're saying is that they're kind of going along, if the pharmaceuticals weren't as strong as they were, or bold as they were, or lucrative as they are, you wouldn't see them doing that as much because they don't have to follow those rules and regulations.
I'm not really sure exactly if they just want to be like the traditional medical doctors.
I've heard at one point that a lot of the doctors, and I honestly just went through a little bit of it myself, because I started to naturally, I was on 2 blood pressure medications, and I brought myself down to 1. I did it myself because it wasn't getting anywhere. They were ready to put another one, the whole, like you were talking about. So I actually naturally started to balance things out, and I brought myself down to 1, and everything's been really smooth with my blood pressure. Mm-hmm. And then next thing I know, I go in for the physical, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's good, you're rectable. Well, you sure you don't want to put this medicine back into use because, you don't want to pop back up? Like, no. Right. But I know, because I've seen and read these things, it's a game of I have to stay on board, so I have to make sure that I give them X amount of medications.
Right. Yeah, but that from a naturopathic perspective, the naturopaths never had that kind of competition. Yeah. So that's where I'm saying that I've seen the evolution going to the Naturopathic Association conference every year, where all of a sudden they're talking about using drugs as their first line, and it's just like, well, wait, what are you doing here? This is I want to go to a naturopath because they're doing something different, not because they're doing the same thing that the medical doctors are doing.
That's my choice, yeah.
Right.
Well, and there's been a political shift, which is that naturopathic colleges that didn't get into some kind of an alignment for NMDs that actually were open to, who were kind of being more mainstreamed towards the MD stuff. There was a passage, and I don't know if it was, I think it was nationally, but there was a passage, at least in several states. This is back when I was traveling around and actually went to a naturopathic conference and went to a lot of that stuff and was speaking, and that the other colleges were closed down, they were forced out, you could not get recognition. There's only like four or five naturopathic colleges that you could actually then get into the insurance game with and would be recognized. And so they were undercutting it. And in some ways, every time one of the alternatives gets close enough to be considered normal, you will find that they will then, when chiropractors started getting more accepted, they started dishing acupuncturists. We're not them now, we're accepted. And then that happened some with the acupuncturist. And the massage schools practically tried to put Reiki out of business. No, they can't touch hands, they don't have blah, 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 blah. And so it's always a kick. I mean, as a medical intuitive, I'll be the last cat that always gets kicked, and I don't really care. Go ahead, kick me. Like, that's a new feeling. But you see this, and it's because you get this, you sell your soul to be part of the in-group. And that's what it is. And I'll tell that to any NMD that's doing medicine in front instead of herbs first. I'll say to any chiropractor, they can come right here and I will tell them, you have sold your soul, how does it feel?
Right. No, I agree with you, and I don't know what the answer is. And there's a lot of pressure. I mean, people don't want to pay out of pocket, to see some practitioners, and if it's not covered by the insurance, they may not want to do it. And unfortunately, most insurances don't really cover naturopaths. I think in New Hampshire it's allowed to be covered, but I don't think any of the plans are actually covering a naturopath.
They do in Vermont, but yeah, they don't in New Hampshire.
But even looking at like chiropractic care, I have insurance, but the copay is so high. It's just it's the same as just paying out of pocket.
Yeah.
There was a time, and I was told it was shifted, and I haven't checked because I don't have health insurance, but there was a period when I did, and the 24 months that I had health insurance in the last 25 years was when I got the heart virus and had to go into the hospital. So I actually was one of those few people that actually paid less into the system, got more paid out of the system, and then got out again.
But you might not want to brag about that,
Yeah.
Hey,
because part of the way that the system's supposed to work is that if healthy people are paying into the system, then it makes it affordable for everybody. But if non-healthy people, if it's only the people who are non-healthy or who have diseases are going into the system, and now they all want care and they want hospitalization and they're going to be high utilizers, then the system can't work.
yeah. Well, I'll pay into the system as soon as you give me the health care that I want.
I agree
Which
with
is
that.
health care. So I'm on board. Allow me to use it what I want. I'm more than happy to pay in the healthcare system. Force me to line your pockets with lobbyist dollars from the pharmaceutical companies. You can kiss my grits, as Flo used to say. Not interested. Not interested in making the wealthy more wealthy. And I forgot my line because there was a line of thought I was going on this, and you distracted me, Ron.
I'm sorry.
It's your fault. So there was a time period when health savings accounts first came out that you could use your health savings account towards alternative, depending on what kind it was. Mm-hmm. And I had a health savings account during that time period, and I actually would use all my alternative stuff for my health savings account.
Right. And then they changed the law, and they restricted it. So it used to be you could get, again, I'm not positive, but you used to be able to get Tylenol and Band-Aids and other things all under your health savings account. And that's certainly in the drug world with the over-the-counter drugs. And you're right, and alternative medicine. And now it's no Band-Aids, no over-the-counter medications. So but the other thing has changed again with Obamacare, and even not just the people who are on the Obamacare plans, but people who had traditional plans now have huge deductibles. Deductibles have gone up significantly, where there used to be $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 deductibles, and $2,000 was high, and now you have a $5,000, $7,000 deductible per person is the norm, and people are putting off surgeries because all of a sudden they go to the doctor, they need to have something done, and they find out that they need to come up with $5,000 or $7,000 before they even can begin this whole process. So they're not doing some of that stuff. So it's hurting the physicians out there who were practicing, whether we say good or bad, but even the medicine that was being provided, now people aren't getting that care because the cost out of pocket is too high.
Right.
Yeah, I remember having health insurance when I was in my 20s. I had great health insurance through a company. I had a $250 deductible a year. Yeah, those days are long gone.
Yeah.
Unless you're a senator or a House of Representatives.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah.
But the thing with the high deductibles now, those are, they get like the plans where it goes into the account, and you're able to take from that money that's in that savings. But they tell you there's certain things you can't utilize those savings on, even though, okay, so I can only use so much of it for chiropractor, I can only use so much of it for different pieces. And to me, if it's my savings spending account for my health, and I like to see a herbalist, or I like to see an acupuncturist, or I like to see whatever, then I think I should be able to do that. But in the way this is all set up, you can't. And yet there are a lot of people who will just do it. They'll take from that account and spend out to whatever it is that they're trying to get, knowing that if something should erupt about this, then they'll have to account for it somehow.
If they get audited, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it's ultimately not that big of a deal. It's just you pay the taxes on the portion that would have been pre-tax.
Yep.
But it's still, even if you're paying, let's say you're using it towards your deductible, it's still a huge amount of money that you have to put out.
Yes.
Yes, it's pre-tax, so it's a little bit of a bigger number than after-tax money. But if you have to save up $5,000, it's easier with the health savings account, but you still got to put $5,000 out of your income into that account. But
Exactly.
it would be nice, as you said, to be able to utilize it how you want to utilize it in the forms of medicine that you want to use, not just the ones that are dictated. And we just don't have a big enough lobbies.
Because the thing with the savings, that account that they have, because you have that high deductible, is the fact that if somebody does go on to a plan, let's say you're 26, you just got your first position, and you're probably healthy at that time, so it's pretty easy. You sit there and you may be a very healthy 26-year-old, and so therefore you probably aren't going to use that deductible for the next year and a half, maybe 2 years. So of course that's all being fed into your savings account. Yet you look at a person who maybe let's say they're 52 and they've lost the position that they've been in and their health has decayed because of that factor. Maybe there was something that went on and they lost their position. Now they get themselves back into a little bit, but they have a lot of medical bills still outstanding, and there's medical bills that they're achieving, and they go and they start a new position. And now this insurance it's going to take a year to get up to that $5,000 that they're taking out every month from there to, recreate it. And in the meantime, like you said, if they need to see a surgeon, if they need to do that, it's like, well, I don't really have that until then, so I think I'm just going to hold off. And then they get sicker.
But one of the things, we had a guest on recently who has a great thing that he actually has, which is a Fitbit that actually will give you, it's a brand new thing just out, but it will give you your EKG, it will give you blood pressure, like anytime you want it, all of these different medical things, so you can actually monitor.
Oxygen and everything.
Oxygen, O2, yeah. But one of the things he said was that he believes more people are going to naturals because they can't afford the deductibles, can't afford the surgery, so now there's actually an increase of, well, what can I do? Do you think that that's true?
I would think that it should be the way. I haven't necessarily seen that yet, but I think that in general that would make sense. That if they can't afford the traditional drug surgery route, they're going to start looking for alternatives that they can do a little less expensively. But going, Angie, back to what you were saying about that 26-year-old, how many 26-year-olds are putting money into a company sponsored 401k or simple IRA because it's that early money that for retirement that they're going to need down the road that's going to build and build and build, and most 26-year-olds, 27-year-olds aren't going to think about taking out some money out of their paychecks, or their incomes are too low. And it's the same thing, putting that money into that health care account. Yeah, if you put away $1,000 a year and you don't need it for 30 years, well, then you've got a lot of money that's been set aside. And I don't know if there's any limitations on how.
Well, see, that's how the health care accounts now, they have to be what it is, whatever your deductible is, that's where your health care account goes.
So it has to go directly to that.
So you have to have taken out the amount so that by the end of that year you have that deductible.
But it has to be used up in that year, or can it carry forward?
You can flow it after that.
Right. Well, that's my point. That if you can accumulate it,
yeah,
and, then
26-year-old
26.
can.
So then if you
but
don't.
The 52-year-old that already has complications, it's going to take them a few years.
Right.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll smarten up and start looking at some alternatives. They're in the long run less cheaper and definitely have less side effects, and so they're So what advice do you want to give to our audience? I mean, because again, we have an audience, we have a national audience, so not everybody can run and say, hey, Ron. I mean, could I walk into the Herbal Path and say, I got a couple questions, is Ron available? Or do people how does all that work? And where would you send people who are trying to become more knowledgeable, let's say if they're in Dover, Delaware?
Okay. Every community may or may not have a really good health food store. So I can't speak for every community, because I hear people who say, I wish you were where we are, and whether they're in Texas or Tennessee or something like that. So they happen to be in the area, they have family, they're traveling, and they happen to find the store. And They say, we wish we had one of these by us. Will you open one by us? Yeah, if people do come in, I'm a little bit more involved now on the administrative side of the business and the growing, with the restaurant next door and managing everything else. But yes, they can speak to me, or I do have a pharmacist, herbalist that work for me. So if they come in and they say, hey, I want to speak to a pharmacist, there's a pharmacist in both stores that they can speak with. Now, they're not there, 100% of the hours that we're open, but there are pharmacists in both stores.
Okay. If somebody out there is watching this and they don't have a local health food store, and I do want to put it out there, because I've been into them in different parts of the country, I have gone into a health food store where the people behind the counter are as dumb as a stump. Just because it's a health food store does not mean that they're knowledgeable. You want to do a little bit more checking in than assuming because they said health food store on the thing. Your chances are a little better. Definitely than GNC or CVS, but
Well, that's absolutely. I mean, but that's the same thing. Your medical doctor. There's good medical doctors and bad medical doctors, and there are knowledgeable, well-trained people in certain places, and obviously not so much in other places.
Where would you send somebody? And then we're going to be wrapping down. But if somebody wanted to become better informed, do you have specific websites or books, or where would you send somebody who's trying to become better educated on this if they don't have access to somebody like you?
Well, certainly the internet has a plethora of information out there, and just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true.
Yep.
But the more research you would do, the more you can start weeding through and saying, okay, what seems reasonable, what doesn't seem reasonable. But there are herbalists all over the country, and you just and with Google we can search for certain terminology and find somebody. So they don't have to necessarily be in a store, but there are herbalists out there, there are naturopaths out there, there are chiropractors, acupuncturists, people who are very knowledgeable on not just the physical modality that they might use, but are also very knowledgeable on herbal medicine, natural medicine. So I think that the resources are out there. You just have to reach out and find them. And you're right, not everyone is going to be a rocket star. But there are really good practitioners all over the country.
Okay. If somebody went to the Herbal Path website, can they communicate with people if they're from another part of the country? Is that a possible?
Yeah, we do phone consults. So we do private consultations in the store, and we'll do a phone consultation as well. And we do ship products after talking to people all over the country, so it is available through us. But if they can find a local person, I would encourage them to do something locally as well. But we obviously are there to help anybody across the country, not just the people who live in our local community.
Okay. Well, this is Ron Stock. He is a registered pharmacist that has gone into holistic
natural pharmacy.
Natural Pharmacy, celebrating his 20th anniversary in Dover, New Hampshire. He also has a store in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Ron, thank you for coming on.
Dr. Kevin, thanks for having me.
Nice having you, Ron.
Thank you, Angie. Great.
So, coming up at the Wolf Center in September, we have How to Easily Manifest Your Goals with Dorothy Morgan. That's our Web of Light astrologer. You don't need to know astrology to actually take this class. She'll do your chart, and based on the charts of the people in the class, she's going to teach you how to easily manifest your goal. September 8th, we have the Full Moon Drumming Circle. September 12th, Angie's Intuitive Practice Group. September 13th, I launched my 4-part Psychic Development Series. I've been doing this for over 25 years, helping people develop their psychic and taking it to the next level. September 19th, we have Angie's Empath Monthly Support Group. On the 20th, What is Your Soul Here to Do? Again, with our Web of Light astrologer, Dorothy Morgan. And she said, you don't need to know astrology. And like the other class, she'll do your chart and address it. And then on September 21st, Mandela Meditation, Shambhala, with Angie D'Anjou, where she is going to do meditation through the Shambhala perspective. She also is going to be doing a new moon meditation, both at 10 in the morning and 7 at night on September 22nd. The Web of Light Expo, September 30th, October 1st in Portsmouth. Come join us there at Great Bay Community College. October 3rd, we're doing Angie's Empath Monthly Support Group. On the 4th, we are doing the Astrology, Let's Start from the Beginning, with Dorothy Morgan, a 4-part series at the Wolf Healing Center. October 5th, a peek at numerology with Angie. October 7th and 8th, 10 to 6, Transformation Weekend that I'll be doing, showing you how to go through a game and transform your life that you can do on a semi-regular basis. October 10th, 7 to 9:30, Angie's Intuitive Practice Gathering. And on October 13th, we're doing a full moon drumming circle. In November, we start, Angie's doing the basic of numerology. That is a 5-part intensive. That goes from 10 to 3, 5 different days to really, so you can figure out not only what is your number, but what does your number mean. And then on November 11th, Angie's Empath Group. November 10th, Angie's Intuitive Practice Group. November 11th, Reiki 2 with Reiki Master Jeff Phelan. November 10th, Full Moon Drumming Circle. And November 17th, New Moon Inspirational Meditation. We even have more than that. We've got the monthly stuff continues through December. We have more classes coming online. In January 13th, 14th, and then February 24th, 25th, that's 2 weekends, 10 to 7. That's the Wei Chi Level 1. I am going to be teaching Wei Chi. It's been a few years, and I've had a lot of people asking. So I'm looking forward to that. You can go to weboflight.com, check out our new website, sign up. You'll see the floating wolves' heads. Go to the Healing Center. You can see what's going on.
Yep.
But we want to thank you for joining us. Thank Ron for joining us. And you get to decide who, if anyone, you're going to give your power to. It's easy when you give your power to somebody else to blame somebody else if things don't work out. But at the end of the day, the only one who really suffers is you. So it may be time to make your own decisions, take your power back, and remember that nobody knows it all. Namaste.